elected president. The president is chosen by electors chosen by each state, and there's one for each senator and U.S. representative. And for this purpose, it also includes the District of Columbia. So there are 100 plus 435 plus 3, so 538 electors. And Article 2, the critical part of Article 2 of the Constitution for our purposes here today is that each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature thereof may direct a number of electors. And so that's going to be critical as we go forward here, because the Congress, although the Congress sets the time and date of the elections, how the electors are determined, are selected, is determined by the states. And so up until, well, as the Constitution was originally written, the electors gathered, and then the top vote getter became president, second vote getter became vice president. That was changed by constitutional amendment in 1800 by the 12th Amendment, and the 12th Amendment provided that if no person has majority in the first electoral vote, then from the persons having the highest numbers, not exceeding 3 on the list, those will be chosen. The president will be chosen by the House of Representatives, with each state getting 1 vote, and that's going to be important in one of the examples that are coming up next. So there are 5 times in U.S. history so far where the popular vote getter has not become president. It really wasn't an issue before 1824 because because the states could choose how their electors were chosen. There were almost no states that used popular vote to select the elector. Popular votes don't even appear to be recorded until 1824, and when 18 states out of the 24 used popular vote to select their electors. But in that election, the popular vote winner actually did not win the election. In the initial electoral count for the candidates were Andrew Jackson 99, John Quincy Adams 84, Mr. Crawford 41, and Clay 37. So it went to the House of Representatives to vote on the top 3. And John Adams, I think he intended to try to be conciliatory by offering Henry Clay, the 4th place winner, the job of Secretary of State if he was elected, which he accepted, with the result being that 37 Clay electors voted for Adams, giving him the election. It was widely perceived that he had bribed his way into the office, and there was a lot of negative. Andrew Jackson especially was really irritated by that. Next, 1876. I think we all know this one too. Rutherford v. Hayes and Samuel Tilden. After the first count, Tilden had 184 electoral votes. Tilden was a Democrat, and Rutherford v. Hayes had 165. But there were 20 votes that were in question.
I hear Boog.
Can you hear?
I can't hear you.
Okay. You can do anything with the volume, Kristen?
I cannot. I have the volume as high as it will go on my end.
Okay.
When you got a little bit closer, Boog, I could hear you a little bit better.
Okay. Well,
is that better, you guys?
Testing. Can you hear that? Is that okay for everybody?
I can hear you better.
Okay.
Good.
We'll stay close.
Thank you.
We will try to protect. Okay.
And
now
everybody else go back on mute.
Okay, we're up to 1876. Rutherford B. Hayes versus Samuel Tilden. At the first count, Tilden got 184 electoral votes versus Hayes 165. But there were 20 votes that were in dispute, and those mostly were from southern states where the states sent 2 sets of electors. And so that was not able to be resolved. An electoral commission was formed, which cut a deal in which the Republican Hayes was given the presidential election, while the Democrat Tilden, the Democrats were given the end of Reconstruction. And so we got the entire Jim Crow era out of that. And that resulted in the Electoral Count Act of 1887, which put in place some procedures to deal with a situation like this. And we saw a lot of them play out during the recent election, all the safe harbor date and the date for the electors to meet. A lot of those were established by this act as a result of the 1886 election. 1888, Harrison and Cleveland. Harrison had Cleveland had a 90,000 vote lead, but Cleveland had a 90,000 vote lead, but lost 233 to 168 in the Electoral College. On up to the modern day, which we all remember, 2000 Bush v. Gore. Gore had over a 500,000 margin in the popular vote, but lost the Electoral College 271 to 266 after what I think is a questionable Supreme Court decision. Now on to 2016, where Hillary Clinton won the popular election by over 3 million votes, but still lost the Electoral College 306 to 232. I mean, that was the actual vote. There were some faithless electors that year. That's a whole nother topic we can get into, not today, but it should have been, well, yeah, 306 to 232 is what it should have been. The actual vote was 304 to 227 because some people didn't vote for who they were pledged to. But less than 80,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania would have, if they changed the right way, would have resulted in a tie, sending the election to the House of Representatives, which would have given the election to Trump. So just 80,000 votes would have made a difference in that election, even though Clinton won by 3 million votes or more. It's also important to note, though, I think that Clinton's overall margin in that election was less than her margin in California. So Trump actually won the popular vote in the U.S. minus California. And so in this year, we had another close election, same electoral count, although it went the other way, 306 to 232 for Biden, but less than 45,000 votes in changing in Georgia, Arizona, and Wisconsin. Again, it would have changed the outcome of the election. So we're in a situation where, as we progress, we're likely to see the situation happening over and over again. So what can be done about it? That's the question. The closest we've ever come to changing the Electoral College, as far as I can tell, was in 1969 with the buy-seller amendment. It's proposed after the 68 election when Nixon received 110 more votes than Hubert Humphrey, even though he had less than a 1% margin in the popular vote. And the reason for that was that George Wallace was a strong third-party candidate. And so what was proposed was a constitutional amendment that would replace the Electoral College with a two-round system, sort of similar to what's used in French presidential elections. Under this plan, if somebody, a presidential candidate, won more than 40% of the vote, they'd be elected outright. If not, they'd go to a runoff with the top two candidates. That actually passed the House by a vote of 339 to 70. Richard Nixon approved it. It passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, but it was filibustered in the Senate. And even though there was a Senate majority that supported it, it was filibustered. Only received 54 votes to end the filibuster and failed a second time, and that was the end of that. So, so here we are in the present day with the proposed National Popular Vote Amendment. So I've introduced the National Popular Vote Act, I believe, 3 times, 2017, 2018, and again this year. Hasn't gotten a hearing either time. First 2 times it went to the Federal and State Affairs Committee. This year it went to the Elections Committee, where the chairman is one of the most hyper-partisan individuals in the body. And so obviously it didn't get any traction there. What with the National Popular Vote Compact works is that it proposes a compact between states called the Interstate Compact on the Agreement among States to elect the president by national popular vote. And it goes into effect when states that have 270 votes or more have adopted it. And right now, let me see, it's been enacted into law 16 states with 196 electoral votes. So it just needs 74 more to go. And the states that enacted haven't all been big states. There have been some smaller states like Delaware, Hawaii, Rhode Island, but they're predominantly democratically controlled states. But it's also passed 41 state legislature, well, it's passed 41 state legislative chambers in 24 states. So there's some support in it in a lot of other places. But the way it works is that states in the compact agree to have their state election officer, one, certify that the number of popular votes in the country, and then directs that those votes be directed toward the winner of the national popular vote.
Just impossible.
Impossible? I heard a comment there. Let me see. Getting lost in my notes here. Okay. All right. Yeah. It's not like we're going to pass this in Kansas, but it uses the safe harbor date that's established in the Electoral Count Act of 1887 as the date for determining the popular vote in each state. And it has to be certified by the state election officer in each state because it's still a state function to determine how the electors are chosen. One thing it does that the other thing it does is, in addition to it establishes it requires each state who's signed it to conduct a popular election for president and vice president of the United States, which is actually only a constitutional requirement in Colorado. I mean, under our current law, our state could not have a popular election for president. We could just directly elect electors, or we could, the legislature could pick electors. And that's something that's permissible under the U.S. Constitution. No state does that now, but this state requires member states to do that. So, all right, one advantage of this proposal is a workaround for having to change the U.S. Constitution. All the other proposals that happen would require constitutional change, which would require 2/3 vote of each house of the legislature and approval by 3/4 of the states. That's a pretty high hurdle in our current system, unlikely to happen. All that is required for the National Popular Vote Act to become law is for states with 270 electoral votes to adopt it. And because it is a compact, it takes care of the problem of state law being subject to change. Like if this is done by law without the compact, then the legislature could revoke it the day after the election, the day before the election. This prohibits the state from withdrawing from the compact more than 6 months, or less than 6 months before the date of a presidential election. So that takes care of that. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the question of unfaithful electors. There's some states require their electors to vote as pledged. Some don't, and as that becomes more of a problem, we may see legislation on that. There have been other methods proposed for addressing this situation. But before we go on, any questions about how? I'm not sure I did a clear job of really explaining how the National Popular Vote Act works. Any questions on that? Okay, seeing none.
I had a question, Boog. So I'm a little unclear on so for us, are we working toward the total of 270 votes, or a state that has more than 270 electoral votes?
Well, right now, 16 states that have a total of 196 electoral votes between them have passed the statute.
Okay.
In order for it to become effective, states with 74 votes would have to pass it. And there have been, it's passed at least one house in 41 different states. And so there's a serious there is possibility of having it occur. Although it's really, I'm not sure what the right combination of states would be to get it over 270 at this point, but it's within, I don't know if 2024 is a possibility, but I think it's doable. Although, again, I think in a lot of smaller states don't have although a lot of smaller states don't have a big incentive to do that because, the electoral college system gives the votes for those people in those states and gives them more weight in states and voters in other states. And so in a state like Kansas, we're unlikely to see any action here because there's an argument that this mechanism it wouldn't cure the problem of candidates going only to the big states or the swing states. But I think that if every vote here counted, I think we would see more activity from people trying to pick up. A vote here would matter, whereas a vote here really doesn't now in the current system. So,
Thanks, I clarified that.
sure. There's another proposal put out by a group called the Make Every Vote Count, which is they call it the voter choice ballot. It's kind of like the National Popular Vote Light because it doesn't require anything from any other state. It just would require putting on a presidential ballot the question, do you want the candidate who receives the most votes in the nation to become the president? And if you do, mark yes. And so it would, if a majority of voters in that state marked yes, then those electors would be voted for the majority candidate, but it wouldn't require any other state to do that. So I don't think it would achieve the goal, especially no, it really wouldn't achieve the goal we're after. There was another attempt to change the Constitution to make the process more fair in 1950 with the Lodge-Gossett fractional proportion proposal. It would award the state's votes, electoral votes, based on a percentage of popular vote, and I think they would calculate it to the third decimal place. But for instance, under this Lodge-Gossett fractional proportion method in Kansas, I'm just going to make up these numbers, but say in 2020, if Trump got 70% of the vote total and Biden got 30%, then Trump would get 70% of our 6 electors, or which would be 4.2, and Biden would have gotten 1.8. So I think it would be and that actually passed the Senate, on a 64-27 vote in 1950, but it didn't get through the House, and I don't see that there's any action on it after that. So it would be an improvement on the current system, but it would still retain a lot of the inequalities built into the electoral college system, which gives a disproportional weight to voters from small states, because every state has, no matter how small, has 2 electoral votes for each of its senators, even if they only have 1 representative. And so someplace like Wyoming, your vote counts a lot more than it does in a place like California, for instance. So there is also a proposal, some states allocate their electoral votes by congressional district. Maine and Nebraska do that. I haven't seen any real evidence of any other states moving in that direction, all that would, again, make the process a little more fair, but still not fix the underlying problem. Yeah, and there's another version of the fractional assignment, which would give still the whole number proportional, where the top vote getter gets they round off the proportions by integers instead of doing fractions, which still require constitutional amendment. So that's really all I've got on national popular vote and the electoral college. I'd be happy to take any questions, or we can move on toward the bad election laws that we passed in the state house this year. Seeing none. Okay.
Oh,
Denise?
no, me again, sorry.
Yeah, sure.
So with the redistricting that is going to be happening, that's just going to dig us deeper in the hole. Is that what we're looking at?
Probably. There's a bill introduced to have a nonpartisan redistricting commission. That didn't get any votes. So we're going to go through the process, but as before, it'll be dominated by the majority party and will likely be drawn to favor the majority party. And, you know, in 2010, 2011, in 2020, 2011, 2012, there was the advantage that there was a split in the majority party between the moderates and conservatives. They could not agree on a plan. And so it went to the courts who gave back what I think is a really fair redistricting. Like, for instance, it put all of Lawrence in the same U.S. congressional district. But that split doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the moderates, I mean, the actual moderates left in the House, I can probably count on one hand. And so they will unite around the plan that favors them, is what I expect to happen. So yeah, it's yeah, I didn't want to get into just general politics of the state house this year, but we can to the extent people want. No, this is the most. I've been in the House. This is my 7th year. In the first year I was in the House, there were 28 Democrats and 87, no, 87, yeah, 80, no, 97 Republicans. But it is more unbalanced this year when we have 41 Dems and 194 Republicans, just because the moderates don't exist anymore. I mean, in 2015, there was still possibility for coalition work between moderate Republicans and Democrats on a lot of key issues. And that really only exists, I think, on education funding. It might still exist. On every other issue, there's a veto-proof majority, basically, for what the majority party wants to do. And we saw that, definitely saw that with the election bills that came through. The first one we dealt with was, it was kind of silly. It was a House resolution, concurrent resolution to urge our Congress to reject the For the People Act, H1S1. It's the big reform package that's going through Congress right now. And it's an 800-page bill. It's it may have some overreach in it, even though I think the overall content is good. But after some debate, we rejected that on a vote of, well, we passed the resolution to urge Congress to reject the For the People Act. I voted 84 to 38 and went down 28 to 11 in the Senate. It's a resolution, so it doesn't go to the governor, but you can see what the numbers are like there. We had 2 other bills. I believe there were league testimony on both of these. First one being HB 2332, which it amends the law. Well, it requires a voter to have an address that's not a PO box. Yeah, I think that's kind of in law right now, but we've had some prominent examples of people breaking the law by registering to vote at a PO box that's not in their district. Anyway, this makes that an official crime. It really alters the law on solicitation of advanced ballot applications. Again, right, it would limit an individual to collecting no more than 10 advance ballots from other people and delivering them to election officials. It would prohibit candidates from doing that entirely, except for close family members, which it doesn't define. And I think this is it's proposed as a way to limit ballot harvesting, but there wasn't any evidence given that I could see that there's been any problem related to this practice in Kansas. And basically, it just penalizes, those candidates who work hard and go out and knock on doors and deliver ballot applications to voters and help them return them. And so from now on out, it's going to be limited to 10 per person. We did a lot of bundling this year in conference committee because the Senate didn't get much work done. This included the bill that would have limited restricted sending mail solicitations for advanced ballot applications. I remember this happened this year. You probably had it too. That all of a sudden, at one point, we got some out-of-state organizations encouraging us to file applications for advanced ballots. I think there were a lot of people who were confused by that. I kind of raised my eyebrow when it happened at the time. I thought it was a scam at first, but this just one section of this bill just requires a little more transparency for organizations that do that sort of thing, which I didn't think was bad. When it was a separate bill, I voted for it. This bill also, in response to some of the things that happened during the last election, purports to prohibit the governor or the judicial branch from altering any election laws, which on its face I think is unconstitutional and is going to be thrown out. But it also changes, strengthens the law on election tampering, just clarifies that doing electronic vote tampering is illegal as well as other vote tampering. I don't think there's any problem with that. And let me see. Yeah, so that package passed the House 83-38 and Senate 27-11. You may be seeing a pattern starting here. That's the way the House is working right now. One more election bill, 2183, is again makes it illegal to backdate a postmark for an absentee ballot. No evidence that that's happened. It removes the Secretary of State's ability to extend the deadline for receiving advanced ballots in case of emergency. Again, we didn't see that happen, but it's part of the attempt to limit the use of advanced ballots. It prohibits the false representation of being an election official. It's written so broadly, though, that all you have to do is do something that gives someone the appearance of impersonating an election official for it to be not a level 7 felony. I think there's some vagueness problems there. I mean, I think a lot of us in this room do things that someone might interpret as, us as being election officials. And so I think there's a real serious problem there. What else does it do? It expands the definition of electioneering a little bit. But again, it's the phrase that came up when maybe the most popular phrase in the House this year, a solution in search of a problem. This one passed the House 80-42, Senate 27-11. So on the surface, it looks like it might not be enough votes to sustain a veto, but if the veto came down, I think that one can go either way. So I suspect I haven't filled up all of our time yet. So if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. If not, I can just talk a little more, answer questions about the session in general.
So Boog, if Governor Kelly vetoes this, is it fairly likely that they'll override it?
Well, like I said, for 2183, it was 80-42. They would need 84 to override. So there may be some soft votes there that, if people can get away with voting against the party on the other side, if it's going to pass unanimously. But if it really comes down with where their vote was necessary to make it happen, they might swing. So even though they only had 80 votes on 2183 and 83 on 2332, I think if it came down to a to overriding a veto, they might be able to scare up a few more. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Frustrating.
Yes, there's a lot of frustration out there.
Boog, did
Yeah.
you happen to notice the article from Associated Press yesterday that talked about our league member, Charlie Crabtree, who in the 2020 election went to 10 or more nursing home or retirement homes and collected 75 ballots to return to the county clerk?
That would be a crime under the bill we just passed.
Right.
I don't know if it's a misdemeanor or a felony. Let me check that. It would.
I think they changed it to a misdemeanor.
Yeah, they did. Class B misdemeanor. So, well,
But that's even, what, 6 months in prison or $1,000 fine or something?
potentially, yeah. For the upper level misdemeanors, I mean, the sentence can be potentially higher than for a lower level felony, because if you don't have any record, there's presumptive probation for most lower level felonies, but there's no similar provision for misdemeanor. So if you got a judge on the wrong side of you, yeah, you could do actual 6 months in jail for conviction of this. But what do you expect from communists like the League of Women Voters?
Quite true. I just forwarded you the email of the article.
Okay, thank you. Any other bills that the league is following this year?
We've been following some on, or some of the response or actual legislation on allowing 18-year-olds to concealed carry. And of course, the school funding bills and the school voucher bills have been a problem. And the general budget, and the fact that we still don't have an energy plan. And we, some counties, they were talking about limiting wind turbines to 1 every mile, which would kill the wind energy expansion. So there's a number of bills, and of course, the fact that there's a constitutional amendment now on the ballot next August to take away women's constitutional rights.
Sure.
We're kind of looking at all those.
Yeah, it's definitely the most challenging year I've had since I've been there. And I think the limitation on collecting advanced ballots has a lot to do with the constitutional amendment in August of next year. I think there is a definite connection there. And it's my understanding that Kansans for Life was lobbying for this particular change in the election law.
From what I read in that article yesterday, they are one of the major supporters. Yes.
Right. So it's all part of the strategy.
Again, so frustrating, infuriating, really. Did anybody have any questions?
Yeah. Well, I apologize for not filling up the space. That really, I mean, National Popular Vote Act is really a fairly simple topic, and it's, again, I wish there was some hope of us moving forward on it here in Kansas, although I think there is some hope of having it happen on a national level. And so we just keep, I mean, I guess I had the list of states where you could be lobbying for. Anyway, I hope our friends in leagues in other states around the country where they've passed at least one house are working on their representatives to make this happen by 2024. But again, I wouldn't hold my breath.
That would be ideal.
Ideal, but we'll see what happens. These are really frightening times, I think, and I'm really concerned about the future of our country. And I'm really glad there are organizations like the League out there standing up for, democracy.
There's definitely a lot to be done. We've been doing a lot of discussion with community partners, and so I think hopefully across the state, if we can build those coalitions, maybe we could make some headway. Because I do think that the people that are in Topeka, our legislators in Topeka, are not necessarily representative of Kansans in general.
I think if you look at the polling done by Fort Hays State University and compare it to the votes in the legislature, I think you're absolutely right. I think the legislature is far more conservative than Kansas in general. And I think and that's another problem that we could probably talk about at some point, is the effect, why that's the case. I mean, I believe that our presidential our primary system is probably a big contributing factor. As you know, that turnouts tend to be smaller primary races. So the people who turn out on both sides are the people who have the strongest beliefs. They tend to be the farthest right and the farthest left. And so I think that's a big contributing factor to the polarization that we're seeing. But I don't know the best solution to that, whether it's to, have the joint primary like you see in some places for the top, where all the candidates from every party run at the same time, and the top two voters go to the general. That would mean here that a lot of places in Kansas, voters can only have two Republicans to choose from, which is a lot of places in Kansas people only have one Republican to choose from now. So maybe that would be an improvement, but not, because there were quite a few uncontested elections on both sides of the aisle last year.
A little bright spot is that League of Women Voters US is looking really closely at the ANPVIC and saw that you were going to speak regarding that topic and reached out to me. And so I got her in contact with League State and gave her the name of someone. So I think that's encouraging that they've got that on their radar too. There's someone working on it.
I will lobby our chairman for a hearing again next year, because the bill's still alive, because it's the second year of the biennium, but I'm not holding out much hope for that.
Boog, have you heard anything about the committees for redistricting meeting, or even for the Senate being chosen?
Yeah, I thought I heard that there was one meeting that they've had already, but from Tom Burrows, but I may not have heard that correctly. You may be more on top of it than I am. Yeah, but there's no data yet, as far as I know, so that may end up being a problem if the deadline for the data is extended. So.
Right, but 10 years ago, wasn't it that because of Kansas' way of recounting military personnel and university students, that Kansas usually didn't get that final data until late August or September anyway, but yet they were starting to hold the across Kansas forums or meetings to ask for people's input.
Yeah, so I assume that's going to start at the normal time, but I haven't heard any dates. But that will be a major change here. I think when redistricting comes, we can look at Douglas County picking up an extra House seat, because with the increase in population and the number of students that will be counted now, my understanding is the number of extra citizens, our census count would increase by around 11,000 because of the constitutional amendment, and throw in the population changes, there's about 23,000 for a House district. So we will almost certainly, I think, get a additional Kansas House seat after the redistricting. And how that will shake out, I don't know. But yeah, I still haven't decided whether I'm running in 2022 or not. I mean, I would like to go until 2024, but there are some serious financial reasons, incentives for me to stop after this year.
We need you to stay.
Right, I need to figure out a better way to make a living during.
Absolutely, we need you.
Well, thank you. I'd like to serve one more term, but it's well, my problem is, I'll just share it with you because we're all friends here. I could retire next year and get my full capers and get paid more money than I'm getting for being a state representative, and so.
And a lot less stress.
Yeah, well, and I could like get a job rather than trying to scare up work in the off season. So I'll see. I mean, it's I wish that we could make a change, just to actually pay representatives a reasonable salary instead. But I don't see that happening anytime in the near future either.
Well, it does seem like if we paid a living wage, then we might have a larger pool of candidates to choose from across the state too, because at this point, it's not financially feasible for most people, right?
Right. No, I don't know how some of my colleagues do it. Yeah, you almost have to be retired or independently wealthy or have a working spouse to make it really work. But I think that's one reason. I think my recent count, we're down to 11 lawyers in the legislature, like 2 in the Senate and 9 in the House. I think that's, I mean, 50 years ago, it was prestigious for a firm to have a partner in the legislature, so they cut into slack. But it's just not the case anymore. I mean, the joke I've heard somebody say is that 50 years ago there were the legislatures full of farmers, full of lawyers, not so many farmers. Now it's full of farmers, not so many lawyers. The problem is that the reason is that 50 years ago you had subsistence farmers, now you have subsistence lawyers. So, which kind of way it feels for me sometimes. But no, I think we're seeing a real lack of legal background in a lot of the things we do. I mean, there's not even enough. We don't even have a majority of lawyers on the Judiciary Committee. That's because if we there are 3 of us on the Democrat side. One of us is Vic Miller. He's our election law expert, and so elections meets at the same time as judiciary. So we really need Vic to be the ranking in elections. So we only have 2 lawyers on the judiciary, and only, even though it's been down, it used to be a 23-member committee, they downgraded it to 17. There's still only 8 lawyers on it, and that's why we've been getting some of the bad legislation we've been seeing. I think and we do have really good legally trained staff that we can rely on, but just having legislators with a better understanding of the law and the legal process would give us better outcomes, I think.
It certainly does seem that way. Yes. Is the pay ever a discussion?
No.
No.
I haven't heard, but there's just I mean, especially a climate like this. I mean, everybody's afraid of being punished by the voters if they raise legislative salaries, even though legislative salary, even if it was doubled, it'd still be a trivial amount of our $8.2 billion budget. That people perceive it differently.
Okay, good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad I could cheer you all up today.
You're a bright spot in our day, Boog.
Yeah, sorry about that. I wish I had better news. But.
Well, we appreciate the update for certain. Yes. Does anybody have any other questions?
Yep.
Denise? I think you're muted.
I'm
There you go.
unmuted now. Okay. Hi. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Boog. I really appreciate it. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel at a later date. And next month's hot topic is with Rachel Sweet with Planned Parenthood Great Plains. And she will be talking about that legislative development with the constitutional amendment that will be on the primary in 2022. So that will be another very informative hot topic. So hope you can all join us then. And
Okay. Well, I apologize for not filling up the space better. I do appreciate your time and attention though. And yeah, look forward to getting back to live hot topics. And if y'all have any questions about any legislative matter anytime, don't hesitate to give me a call or an email.
Thank you so much, Boog. We really appreciate you being here, and thank you for the good information too.
Well, thank you for all your hard work.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye-bye.